it's Lisa. Welcome to my craft room. I'd like to take you on a tour of the room where I do my paper crafting and I do my scrapbooking, my card making, mixed media, and also where I do all my sewing now as well. This is also still a guest bedroom. About 5 years ago I did a tour of this room, and at the time everything was paper crafting and the guest bedroom. And I shared how I used my storage and how I used the room for that particular hobby. Now I've expanded. About 2 years ago I moved my sewing things up here, just a few things, just to kind of see if I could make it all work in one space. This room has fantastic light, and I was tired of being in the basement with the sewing. So over time I've moved a lot more stuff up here. I still have a large work table downstairs, but I do most everything related to sewing in this room. The only hobbies that I have that don't happen up here, of course, are cooking and my knitting. I occasionally knit up here, but I do keep the supplies elsewhere. What I'd like to start with is just an overview of the room, and then I'll break it down and show you the sewing area, the paper crafting area, and how it all comes together. What I'd like to focus on is how I've used regular furniture, repurposed things, inexpensive storage, and stuff that we have built to make this space work. The only furniture I have ever purchased for this room as a complete piece of furniture is a chair. Because the one other function this room has is it's sort of my little cave, my space to come just to chill out. And it's really nice to have that space in the house for yourself. So my husband has the office and I have this space. So that's also what's happening up here as well. But I'd like to share with you a little bit of how the room functions and the things that we have made to make it function. Let's start with an overview of the room in general. Something you'll notice about this room as we go along is there are a lot of doors and windows. When you come in the door to the right, there's a closet and some traditional bedroom furniture. The bed is up against the wall, and I recently took out the headboard to give myself even more room, and I scooted the bed a little bit closer to the bathroom, which is through the doorway to the right. We won't worry about that one today, but it is nice to have an adjacent bathroom in this room. There's my chair that I like to sit in, and a little table for my laptop. Over against the window, or under the window, is all of the sewing area, and we'll look at that in more detail in a few moments. There's a design wall. This table is the real workhorse of the paper crafting, and underneath the table are a number of rolling bins and storage, and there's some storage up above, and there again are more things that cut into the room with the heating system and whatnot. So I have a fairly decent sized space. I'll put the dimensions on the screen. But what I don't have is wall space, because this is an attic style room with a high ceiling, so I don't have tons of wall space. Now right off the bat you'll see something unusual in this room, and that is this table right in the middle of the space. When I moved the bed against the wall and a little closer to the bathroom, the reason I did that was to be able to accommodate this table. My builder who did my house built this table for me. Originally, my sewing room was what's now our office. It's a small room on the first floor of the house, and I just had sewing as a hobby. And about 3 years after we moved into the house, 4 years after we moved into the house, I started a business, and very quickly that little sewing room just wasn't large enough. And this, what had been my cutting table, had to be replaced by a 5-foot by 12-foot cutting table, and that's what's still down in the basement and will be here as long as I live in this house. Because it's a really great table for a lot of purposes. But for a lot of cutting, a small table will do, and that was the one thing I didn't have up here in terms of sewing, was a table. So I really wanted to bring this up here, and I didn't have a wall to put against. The only place I could put it was here in the middle of the room, and what makes it work is it sits catty-cornered and across the corner of the bed. Now if we have guests, this can roll out of the way. It's on rollers, so I can scoot it just a little bit out of the way if I have one person sleeping in the bed, but if I need to make room for a couple, then I can just move it over against the other work table and have full access to both sides of the bed, and I have to do that when I'm changing sheets and things. So it's a little bit cramped, but it does work, and I still have access to it as a cutting table with the cutting mats on it. Now let's go over to the other to the area under the windows and take a look at how that storage is used for a pressing table and storage for quilting and my sewing machine. The biggest changes I've made to this room have had to do with this wall. This triple dresser was part of the original bedroom suite that that my parents bought, I think even before I was born. So this bedroom suite is at or going on 60 years old now. I'm not quite that old, but they had a long time. And it's really well made. There's a triple dresser and there's a chest of drawers that you'll see a little bit later on. There used to be a nightstand in here that I also used as part of my paper crafting, and I've moved that out. The bed, all of this stuff is still original to my life. And the reason I've kept it so long is it's such great storage. Now, I could take it out, refinish it, clean it up, make it, more modern, but I'm the only one that uses it, and getting it off the second floor and doing all that and getting it back on would be a monumental task, and I just don't want to take that on. So, but this piece of furniture looked really good centered under the window. And I had to kind of get over the idea that it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's how it functions. So it is back against the wall now, and it is all of the drawers in this piece of furniture had paper crafting things in it. There was a thickers drawer, there was a place for the stamps. It was a wonderful place to store stamps, but I really needed storage for my quilting supplies. So I wanted to open up these big drawers to be places to put projects in process and to store my larger supplies. The top drawer now has we used to have punches, now has my rulers and things in there. There's a little drawer right here that's to the right of my sewing machine that has the scissors and marking pens and things, and I'm just in and out of this drawer all the time when I'm sewing. So I've really tried to keep things at hand. The shelf that's here used to hold scrapbook pages, and it still does. I still put scrapbook pages up here, but it's a great place to prop up rulers. So everything's getting a little bit of extra function, and all this little shelf is a piece of corner molding, like ceiling molding that you might have in a crown molding in a house, and I just flipped it up on its side, painted it, and screwed it into the wall. I did a separate little video on this a long time ago that shows this for scrapbook pages, but it's a great place to put my rulers. Now, what's also special about this table is this pressing mat. I needed a place to do my ironing for sewing, and this dresser is not tall enough. If I put something directly on it and tried to iron, I wouldn't be at a good position for me, and I didn't really have room for an ironing board up here. So I made a pressing board. I watched a video online to how to create the board, and I don't remember, this was a couple of years ago, and I don't remember where that video came from, but there are videos for showing you how to do a pressing board. Essentially, it's just a piece of either plywood or a board that you buy. I think this is a 2 foot by 4 foot board that's probably 1/2 to 3/4 inch thick that I got at Lowe's. I covered it with some warm and natural batting, and then I covered it with canvas, and we stapled it, upholstered it, stapled it on the bottom, and wet it really good and let that dry, because the canvas will shrink and the cotton batting will shrink, and then it will make a nice tight fit and give you a good pressing surface. What's special about this board, and I'll show you the bottom of it, is it has some little feet that I added to it. These are little screw-on feet that I added onto I screwed this narrow board or piece of wood into the top before I covered it, and then the feet just screw on to that. And that allows me to have the board at just the right height for me for pressing. So you want something, if you set up your ironing board and see what's the perfect height for you, you can measure that and then figure out what a good pressing height is. And I made it a little bit larger than the dresser underneath to give myself a little bit more pressing surface. This is also portable. I can move it off, and for a while I was using this as a cutting surface and pressing, just moving the board back and forth, and that was really cumbersome, and it's why I brought the other table up here. My sewing machine is a new, to me, Pfaff. In fact, I think this is a new model for them. It's the Expression 710. I had an older Pfaff machine. I love Pfaff sewing machines. They have a built-in walking foot called IDT, integrated dual feed. I could spend an entire video talking about the Fafa machines, but there are videos out there that tell you all about their wonderful sewing machines. I wanted something with a little bit more space here, and I'm going to turn this on. It'll take it just a second to come up, but the light will go ahead and come on right away, and you can see the benefit of having such a large area when you're doing free motion quilting, which is what I'm about to do with this project. To give myself a little bit more surface, again, a do-it-yourselfer project, I had my local glass company cut a piece of plexiglass that would make one of those extension tables, and then I just glued, I had some old rod from when I was in business that was left over from a job, and I just cut it into pieces and glued this on the bottom. You could do thick dowels and create that same kind of thing. So I just had this cut out, and I made a template, took it to the glass company, they cut a piece of plexiglass, and then I glued the bottom to it, and it just slides right on. This is one of those covers, those slippery covers that you can buy for machine quilting. And if you buy one of these, put the camera down, if you buy one of these, they're like $100 or something. They're really expensive. And I have about $20 maybe in this. I'm not even sure I have that much in it. I think I maybe have $15 or $18 in this. And that's it. So it's pretty inexpensive. The other thing is the table that this is on. It's not been painted yet because I'm still determining if I have the right height for a sewing table. And I'm also a real procrastinator when it comes to painting, so hopefully I'll get this painted one of these days. But I built the table. My husband's back was bothering him, so I did everything when it came to building that table. I ran up and down from the basement, I don't know how many times, when I built it. He helped me figure out the best way to make it as stable as possible, but I made myself my own sewing table. And again, it's just boards and things that I bought at Lowe's. I have about $75 in it. And again, there are lots of videos online for creating all kinds of setups for your sewing machine, so you can look at a lot of different things there. I'm just sharing with you a little bit of what I have done. Something I never thought I could have in this room that has these very short ceilings and not a lot of wall space was a design wall. I looked and looked and looked and tried to figure out where I could put a design wall. What a design wall is used for is a place for quilters to put their fabrics up and to play with the design and figure out how they're going to arrange things. And when I moved everything over, again on this wall from the window, I had this open corner over here. And I looked about getting some storage. I was actually going to buy a set of shelves. I found one at one of the stores, I think it was Home Depot, that would have fit my space perfectly. And I realized that I had created a lot of storage room already in this room by cleaning out, donating things, moving stuff out that I didn't use anymore. And I didn't really need more storage. I needed that corner for the design wall. But there was a problem. My corner wasn't just this little area here. There was an area that was really, really important to this room that I couldn't cover up. I still had to be able to use it. And I finally came up with a way to make the corner do double duty. I have a design wall here. Now once again, there are videos online for how to create the design wall, put the flannel and what you put it on. And the way it works is you just have flannel, and then your fabrics can go up, and you can arrange them and figure out how you're going to lay things out on your quilt. And they stick because it's flannel. And this particular wall, I used the insulation board, and that's what most of the videos recommend. And with the insulation board, you can pen into it. So if you need to, I usually only use pens if I'm putting something that's already been seamed together. It's a little bit heavier up there. But nonetheless, this is a more traditional design wall in terms of the flannel over the insulation board. What's unique about this space, though, is that there's something behind this, and I need to be able to access it. So my wall has to move. And the way my wall moves is very simple. It's on hinges. So it's a door, essentially. So my wall just moves over, and behind it is my closet. And this is the one traditional closet in the room. It sort of bumps back into the attic. And when I open these two doors, it doesn't have a light. It's one of its disadvantages. I'll bring the camera around so you can see what's in there. I have a bunch more of those Sterilite drawers, and I had enough room once I pushed everything back a little bit and rearranged to put the cover for my sewing machine in there. There's some old pillows and other things that are related to a bedroom in this space, but back in the far corner, you can't see it on the camera, is actually even more storage space for sewing stuff. On the insides of the doors I have some stencils, my silhouette mat, so I've really utilized every inch that I could of this space. So the way this works is whenever I need access to those things, I just slide the design wall out and open the doors. Now let's go back and take a look at more how that design wall is constructed. There are hinges here that I've attached to the wall, and the hinges, the other side of the hinges is a 1x4 board. There's a 1x4 down this side, and there's a 1x4 across the top, and the foam board is screwed to the wood board, and that's what creates the door. Now there's also this piece of flannel that's sort of flapping around back here. The reason for that, and this was an extra thing that I did, you wouldn't have to do that, or you probably wouldn't have to, this need anyway, but if you did, you wouldn't have to do this. But I was working on the quilt project that I had laying out there a few moments ago, and I needed a grid to lay my pieces out and really see how they work, and I didn't want to mark up my design board, so I thought, well, I could just make a grid with some extra flannel. So I took some flannel and I marked a grid on it. I velcroed it to the top of the board, so whenever I need that grid, I just flip this over and there is my grid. So I can use this, I've still got pins in the back. So I can take those squares that I had earlier and I can put them in the grid. And this one happens to be 2.5 inches because that's what I needed for that project. I could draw a 2-inch grid, all kinds of things. The one thing I learned about in drawing on the flannel, use like a black Sharpie marker. Don't try anything else. Red markers, every other color rubbed off, but black stayed. That was the one thing that I learned with trying to mark on flannel. But at any rate, this was just an idea for the design wall, kind of an extra. And you could, if you didn't have a design wall that moved like mine, you could still make a grid and then just pin it to the top whenever you wanted to use it, and have that extra, those extra lines for your particular project. I used to do a lot of watercolor quilting, and in fact, I'll try to remember to flip the camera around here and show you a watercolor quilt that's hanging in this room, and it used a 2-inch grid. So if I went back to watercolor quilting, I'd probably, maybe on the back side of this, draw a 2-inch grid, and then I could put that up here and use that whenever I'm working with the design wall. But having the design wall on hinges allows me to access my closet, still have my design wall, and when I'm sewing, I can even actually just pull the design wall a little bit closer to the machine and just pull the things right off the design wall practically without getting up from the machine. So it's sometimes having a cramped space can be a real benefit. Now let's take a look at, let me show you that watercolor quilt, and then we'll take a look at the paper crafting part of the room. Next to the design wall and the closet is, as we start now into the paper crafting portion of the room, because everything under the window and around the window relates to sewing, everything from here on out relates to paper crafting. This table my husband and I built several years ago. It was in the last video, and I won't go through a lot of detail here because it's kind of covered there. The storage underneath is sterilite or things like that, those types of drawers where they roll, they pull out, lots and lots of storage, a little bit of gap here where I had a place to store my washi tape. These kinds of bins, you can buy these at tool stores like Harbor Freight, are wonderful for storing things for your paper crafting. I have some in the bottom drawer that have all of my twine, and there's one with some smaller embellishments and things in there, but almost everything is at hand here. Recently I redid my pen storage. I had them in little round containers, but I've spread them out. These are jars, or they started out as jars. I think I bought them at Walmart, and I just screwed them to the back of this wood board that supports my shelves. These shelves were a do-it-yourself project that I kind of wish I had splurged on. My uncle was a builder, and after he retired, he did lots of odd projects, and I always kind of regretted that I didn't have him come up here and do my shelves for me. But they're functional, and they're covered with so much stuff you don't really see them anyway. I rescued this from, repurposed it. It was going to be thrown out, and it belonged to another business, and it was part of their sampling stuff. They had, I think, tile samples in here. But I took it, and it's now a place for my Distress Oxide and regular Distress inks in here. But I had to work the shelves around the heat vents and that kind of thing. The silhouette is also on this table on the far end. And I took an idea from my husband that in his work area, he has a power strip, and he has everything plugged into that power strip so that when he flips off the power strip, all the stuff that might be turned on goes off. So if I'm using my heat gun or whatever, it's plugged into this power strip. And the light's plugged in. So I know from I can come up partway up the stairs and glance up here, and if the light's off, I know everything's off. So I don't have to worry about having left anything on that might be a problem. I'm really good about unplugging and turning things off, but it's just an extra safety precaution. This was from Pampered Chef. It's supposed to hold stuff in the kitchen, but it's holding supplies here in my paper crafting area. I've really cut down on the amount of ribbon and things and tried to consolidate a lot of stuff, and that's how I've moved the paper crafting to about half of the storage that it used to be. And let's see the last bit of paper crafting storage. This should be a linen closet, but it's actually paper crafting storage. And it's been paper crafting storage for a long time. I did rearrange things, though, when I kind of concealed that closet over in the corner and made it towards a little bit harder to get to. My goal was to not have to move the design wall and get into that closet more than, say, once a week. So when I sat down to do a paper crafting project, I didn't want to be constantly going back and forth to the closet. So I wanted the things over here that I just had to slide one door to open and get access to be the things that I really, really use. And so I've got all of my cardstock now over here. I still have a lot of designer paper. My 6x6 papers are now in here. They used to be on the far end of the room. It's really nice to have everything here. Some of my stamps in baskets and bins. And the way I really made stamp storage was got rid of the baskets. That was another thing I had to get out of my mind. Like the dresser in the middle of the wall, the stamps, it could move, and the stamps didn't have to be in baskets. They didn't have to be sorted into categories. It was actually took up a lot less storage to store them by the type of packaging. So these are some of the more frequently used stamps, but the rest of the stamps are stored by packaging. And they are in this chest of drawers. The bottom two drawers down here are stamps. I have my wood mount stamps, my clear stamps, and then the cling stamps are in these containers, standing up ones anyway, as well as some other stuff in these two drawers. Eventually, I'd like to get rid of enough paper crafting stuff to use it, to make pages and do other projects, that I can take these two drawers and make them the place where my fabric is stored. Because the one thing that I use all the time for sewing that I don't have up here is my quilting fabric. And that seems really strange, but I have a great place for it on the first floor of the house. It's in these bins. They're under the master bed. And the floor down there is a hardwood floor, so it's easy to roll the bins in and out. But if I could have them in these drawers, it would be really great. So I'm hoping to do some more condensing over time. Now this has a pull down. This was also part of that old bedroom suite, so it's been with me my whole life. I have my embossing powders in here. I have my mists. The first thing I would get rid of if I were moving. And the goal is that these are gone by the end of this year. I'm not using them. I need to use them on whatever projects I want and get them out of here because they're taking up a section that could be used to hold stamps or something else. Stencils, still use my stencils quite a bit. For jelly printing and mixed media, so I want to keep those there. And finally, on top, I have a typewriter that my dad gave me. It was his typewriter in his business, and I use it for my paper crafting. And I just have it up here, and I can type from up here. It works fine. I have some storage for some cards and photographs. And then I've moved from my big table all my Stampin' Up! Inks and my ink refills. That was a little bit of an adjustment to not have them there at the table, but it's worked fine. I've pulled out a few right now for a project. I just come over here when I need them, and I use the Distress inks a lot. This really gave me a lot more space on that table to have this out of the way, and visually it just looks so much better to have this over here against a wall rather than to have it on that table. So this is my room, and it's used for sewing, it's used for paper crafting, including mixed media, cards, scrapbooking, it's used for quilting, and it's my chilling out space, and there's still a bed in here. I can still have guests. So, or we can still use it if one of us is sick and the other one and one needs to sleep upstairs. We've got a space to do that. So the room serves a lot of purposes. And I hope you've enjoyed the tour. I will link the old video in the description so you can see the room the way it was a while back. And if you do mostly paper crafting, you might find that to be more useful. But I have used the furniture that I had, inexpensive Sterilite storage, things that we have made. That's what I've used. I've repurposed things. I've never set foot in an IKEA store in my life. They may have great stuff, but I look at the stuff online and I'm like, it's just white cubes. I mean, I just don't get it. So I don't want to spend a lot of money on storage and on furniture. I want to spend my money on my supplies and the things that I enjoy working with. And I'm a creative person, so I wanted to put my creativity to use in how my room functions. So I hope that you've enjoyed the tour, and if you have any ideas for better storage, I'm all ears, because I'm always rearranging this room and trying to eke out a little bit more space out of the room that I have. So thanks for watching.